You ask, what does it mean to be Jewish? And to me, it's my religion, it's my spirituality, it's kind of the way I live my life. I'm very steeped in the traditions and, you know, all the different things that are part of being Jewish, celebrating Shabbat, family occasions, our holidays, Passover, just a lot of things that are somewhat handed down through the Bible and through our family. My Judaism is a reflection of what my family taught me and how we celebrated and observed. So it's a lifestyle for me, and it is my spiritual, being and religion.
Judaism to me is more of a cultural and spiritual connection than a religious. Um, it's also, I think, just one of the labels of my identity.
I grew up in a Reformed Jewish household and am not really practicing as an adult. So what I've learned comes mostly from my childhood, being a kid studying the Old Testament, and and then also the cultural experience of being part of a Jewish community. I think one thing, at least in Reform Judaism, is it teaches a lot of empathy to people that are suffering and inclusiveness and a strong sense of community with people around you. And a lot of the holidays celebrate the seasons and the passage of time, and so a lot of that stuff makes its way into my day-to-day life, whether I'm actually practicing or not.
My parents were part and parcel. That was part of their identity and their. I don't know, but I took it for granted. I just assumed all as well. I think.
Were your parents very strict in their Judaism?
No, they were appreciative, but they didn't like some of the craziness of the Orthodox, and I think that's what they didn't miss from Europe. But it was their identity and part of their community.
My experience probably differs dramatically from my parents. I think they grew up in a period of time where there was more concern about being different and it wasn't celebrated like it is now. And so I think a lot of Jewish people of their generation tended to stick together. And so most of my parents' friends are Jewish, and they surround themselves with other Jews.
The question is, how is my being Jewish different than my parents? Well, I'll start first with my mother. My mother grew up in a very strict Orthodox home, extremely observant. They kept kosher. They walked on the Sabbath. They followed pretty much to the letter what was in the Torah and the Bible on how to live a Jewish life. My mother had, until she went, in high school, she had some friends who were Jewish, and then she went to college and met more friends who weren't Jewish. But for the most part, she lived a very insulated life where everything she did and everyone she knew was Jewish. She really just didn't go outside of that circle.
I guess it could be anything from prejudices that people might have about Jewish people, or making large assumptions about Jewish people, and to everything much more extreme, to like hate crimes or anything that's more violent. But I think it comes up in day to day pretty often. Like people will make jokes about Jewish people and money, or being cheap, or these types of things, and whether you realize it or not, those prejudices plant the seed to what could be people having more dramatically negative acts towards Jewish people.
There's different ways of defining it, but my definition is people who are anti-Jewish, that don't support Jewish people and the Jewish religion. I personally have experienced it just at a very minimal level. In elementary school, I had pennies thrown at me because Jews were known to be penny pinchers. So that was true anti-Semitism. I feel there were times early on in my career that maybe I didn't advance because I was Jewish, but it wasn't blatant anti-Semitism. So I don't really feel like I've experienced, but I've seen where swastikas have been painted, and I've read in the paper, and I feel there's a lot more vitriol now. So it does bother me.
How do I define anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
It's the lack of understanding and appreciation of things Jewish. And anti-Semitism is an antipathy towards Jews and Judaism that can be expressed quietly, stealthily, in experiences that are sometimes very sophisticated.
I personally have never felt it in like a first-hand type thing. I think that physically I don't look Jewish, and so nobody ever really thinks that I am. And then when they find out that I am, it's more questions than it's more questions than I think anything else, and in a curious way versus a malicious way. But I think the community as a whole has really experienced anti-Semitism, especially in the last few years with Charlottesville and with, the shootings in the synagogues in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it's just kind of crazy to me how, our society can continue to kind of hate people that are different than ourselves. And obviously this stems in way more than just anti-Semitism. That's just one very small part of the issue at large.
Well, for me, it's a sense of identity and belongingness. It's wonderful to be part of a bigger thing and that has such a history and such a place in the world. You're part of something bigger than you are.
Lessons learned at an early age of Jews being enslaved that you learn through the Old Testament, and stories of world history of the Holocaust, and those experiences of hearing people of your heritage going through suffering has made me more empathetic adult and more aware of different injustices happening in the world. And I think that perspective has been helpful as an adult.
Wherever you go, there's always someone Jewish. You're never alone when you say you're a Jew. So if you're not home and you're feeling and you're somewhere kind of newish, the odds are don't look far because they're Jewish too.